Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie G20 2025, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. It opens with a drone shot, a city so bright, so modern, it almost glows. The camera soars above a skyline that doesn't just scrape the clouds, but carves through them, cutting glass and steel through the sky with purpose. Beneath it, motorcades snake like arteries, helicopters whisper overhead, and streets pulse with the heat of thousands waiting for a glimpse of something bigger than themselves. There's tension in the air. You don't need a word of dialogue to know it. You feel it in the way the buildings stand, tall and nervous. In the way sirens blare too faintly in the background. In the way the music hums like a fuse waiting to burn. And then, bang, cut to black. A single sentence appears on screen: every world summit has its price. From the first minute, the film wraps its fingers around your throat, not to choke, but to warn. This is no ordinary political thriller. It doesn't waste time explaining itself. It expects you to catch up, to lean in, to keep up with the pace of a world spinning just a little too fast, where global diplomacy teeters on a blade's edge and every handshake could be the start of a war, or a revolution. Set against the backdrop of the most heavily fortified international summit in history, the story spins out like a reel of wire pulled too tight. Leaders from 20 of the world's most powerful nations are gathered under one roof for a once-in-a-generation meeting. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, royalty. The kind of guest list that makes entire continents hold their breath. The setting is fictional, but everything about it feels ripped from tomorrow's headlines. The flags, the flashing cameras, the whispered agendas behind polished speeches. And in the middle of it all, one woman. A Secret Service agent with a past she thought she'd buried and instincts she can no longer ignore. She's supposed to blend into the background, to follow protocols, stick to the script, and leave the global chess game to the people in suits. But when the summit is hijacked by a faction no one saw coming, when the lights cut, the doors lock, and the chain of command crumbles, she finds herself the only one standing between the world's most powerful leaders and an attack engineered not just to kill, but to collapse the entire structure of world order. The pacing is relentless. Every floor of the summit center becomes a different war zone. Every character introduced is either a threat in disguise or a piece of a puzzle we don't know how to solve. There's a Russian intelligence chief who speaks like a poet and kills like a ghost. A British tech advisor with a hacked tablet and a hidden agenda. A young delegate from South Africa whose ambition masks something more dangerous. And somewhere deeper, there's someone no one's accounted for. Someone pulling the strings. The agent begins to realize the attack isn't just about taking hostages. It's about rewiring power. About breaking the old world and scripting a new one. It's not terrorism. It's rebirth. The targets aren't just bodies, they're symbols. Economies. Ideologies. Histories. The corridors of the summit become confessionals and battlegrounds alike. Tension builds in silence as much as in shootouts. There's a sequence halfway through. No score, no dialogue, just the agent walking through a ballroom frozen in fear, red lights flashing, and the slow, impossible click of time running out. Every face she passes might be the last she sees alive. Every shadow could be someone waiting to end it all. And yet, she keeps moving forward. She's not a superhero. Not indestructible. But she refuses to break. There's a grief behind her eyes, a loss the film doesn't reveal until much later. A wound that drives her. And when the twist finally comes, it doesn't explode. It whispers. A conversation overheard through a hidden mic. A familiar voice she wasn't meant to hear again. A betrayal that cuts deeper than any bullet ever could. That's the moment the film pivots. Suddenly, the enemy isn't just the people with guns. It's the system itself. The summit wasn't hijacked from the outside, it was always bleeding from within. Agreements brokered over decades are exposed as masks for control. The agent finds herself hunted not just by mercenaries, but by the very agencies that trained her. Truth becomes toxic. Justice a myth. And the final act? It doesn't let you breathe. A race through underground escape tunnels that were never supposed to be used. A battle in a war room as screens flicker with nuclear countdowns. An impossible choice between stopping the attack or revealing the truth behind it. And at the center of it all, our agent, standing alone in a room full of secrets, daring to make the one decision no one else could. The final shot isn't a resolution. It's a reckoning. A world leader steps in front of cameras, delivers a speech meant to calm the world. But we, the audience, already know the lie behind the words. The real hero is long gone, left bleeding in the background of history. And the system? It survives. Damaged, yes. Changed, maybe. But intact. For now. The film leaves you asking questions long after the credits roll. What if the real threats aren't the ones with weapons, but the ones with influence? What if diplomacy isn't about peace, but about preserving power? What if the future of the world came down to one person no one was watching? Every twist is earned. Every turn rooted in character, not just plot. The film refuses to spoon-feed you answers. It builds a narrative that demands attention and rewards those who listen. And just when you think you've figured it out, it turns again, not with spectacle, but with intent. The performances are layered with just enough ambiguity to keep you guessing. Is the tech advisor friend or foe? Is the captured general lying or telling the only truth he's ever known? Is the agent's past what she says it is, or is there more buried beneath that silence? But it's not just the story that stays with you, it's the feeling. The feeling of walking those marble halls with her. The feeling of not knowing who to trust. The feeling of realizing the world is built on agreements we never signed, decisions we never voted for. And most of all, the feeling that, when pushed far enough, one person can change everything. Not with speeches, but with sacrifice. This isn't just an action thriller. It's a political parable. A tension wire narrative strung between truth and theater. And it dares to ask what happens when diplomacy fails, and the people left holding the pieces are the ones we never meant to protect us. It dares to say that sometimes the world doesn't need saving, it needs rebuilding. And that rebuilding might just start with someone who was never invited to speak, but learned, in silence, how to fight. It starts, not with chaos, but with choreography. Motorcades glide across polished asphalt like sharks beneath black waves. Sirens don't wail. They hum, smooth and restrained, as if diplomacy itself demanded elegance in every footstep. In the heart of a city that gleams like chrome under overcast skies, the world's most powerful arrive. One by one. Flag pins on lapels. Security details that speak in code. Faces tight with secrets. Beneath the surface of smiles and handshakes, something stirs. The city, though tranquil, feels too still. Like it's holding its breath. Inside the summit center, all glass walls and mirrored ceilings, the air is filtered and chilled. It's a fortress disguised as a hotel, a labyrinth of conference rooms, underground passages, surveillance nests, and panic rooms disguised as powder rooms. Nothing here happens by accident. Everything has been rehearsed. Every camera angle. Every line of sight. Every escape route. The world's leaders are here for a historic vote, a global accord designed to shift economic power, to redraw lines most assumed were etched in stone. But no one came to compromise. They came to win. And someone came to burn it all down. Her name is Kate Saunders. She doesn't speak much. She doesn't need to. Clad in the black uniform of a senior Secret Service agent, she walks the line between visible and invisible. Her earpiece hums with chatter, but her eyes do the real work. She watches the angles others ignore. She counts doors and hallways like steps. She notes the weight of every silence. The kind of agent who doesn't just respond to threats, she senses them. And on the morning of the summit, she senses something. It's in the way a caterer avoids eye contact, in the odd flicker of a hallway security camera, in a brief whispered phrase on a radio frequency she's not supposed to monitor. Phase 1 confirmed. Kate files it away, quietly. She doesn't report it, not yet. There's a protocol, yes, but there's also instinct. And hers has been sharpened by years of watching powerful people lie. She keeps her eyes open, her gun holstered, and her secrets closer. The first major moment hits just after noon. An unplanned fire drill. Or at least, that's what they call it. Alarms flash. Delegates are herded from the main chamber to secure lounges. A diplomatic assistant from Italy is found disoriented in a corridor, muttering about someone tampering with the ventilation system. Kate is sent to investigate, along with 2 other agents, but when she reaches the service tunnel beneath the West Wing, she finds nothing but silence, and 1 bullet casing still warm. It's the first sign that something is already unraveling. But upstairs, the summit continues. Speeches begin. Posturing commences. On the surface, it's all ceremony. But underneath, threads begin to pull. A live translation system crashes for 20 minutes. Cell service drops intermittently in specific delegate zones. A scheduled joint press conference is cancelled without reason. Someone is testing the walls. That night, a gala is held. Designed for optics. Cameras. Smiles. Kate, posted near the perimeter, moves among the shadows. Watching. Listening. The ballroom sparkles. A string quartet plays something old and Russian. Guests twirl and toast, and beneath the soft hum of champagne and diplomacy, Kate's eyes fix on a tall man in a maintenance uniform lingering by the central stairwell. He's not on any roster. She follows. He disappears. But in his place, tucked behind a service cart, she finds a tiny black cube, no larger than a sugar packet. A signal jammer. Pulled from the wall like a rotten tooth. She pockets it. Doesn't call it in. Not yet. Because she's beginning to suspect the protocols themselves may be compromised. Elsewhere, other cracks form. A South Korean advisor is locked out of their quarters without explanation. A journalist from a minor European outlet is detained for unauthorized access to an upper-level suite, but no one ever sees the footage. And the Summit Central server, holding sensitive diplomatic communiques, crashes for exactly 8 minutes, long enough for someone to slip in and out with what they need. By morning, Kate's unease solidifies into certainty. This is no coincidence. But before she can act, the hammer drops. At precisely 7:47 a.m., the main security hub goes dark. Doors across the summit lock simultaneously. Guards find themselves locked out of their own checkpoints. Communications vanish. Emergency frequencies are silent. In the main chamber, 20 world leaders are sealed inside, confused, angry, and entirely unaware that the enemy is already among them. Kate, cut off from her team, tries to make contact. No answer. She reaches for the panic beacon embedded in her lapel. It blinks red. Jammed. Someone knew how this system worked, and they used that knowledge to bury it. She moves fast. By muscle memory more than planning, she reaches the north stairwell just as the first shot rings out. Muffled, distant, like thunder caught behind walls. It's not a massacre. Not yet. It's precision. Surgical. Designed to destabilize, not destroy. She makes her way through service corridors, gathering what intel she can from wall screens still flickering with fragmented data. The attack, she discovers, is two-pronged. One team is working to secure the leaders. Not kill them. Not yet. Just control them. The second team is targeting data centers, communications hubs, and anything that might be used to broadcast the truth. This isn't a hostage situation. It's an information war. And so far, the attackers are winning. In a maintenance room beneath the media wing, Kate finds a surviving technician. Young. Shaking. He tells her what little he knows. A group posing as Summit tech staff began disabling firewalls hours earlier. They knew the floor plans. They bypassed biometric scanners. Someone on the inside let them in. Trust shatters. Kate takes what intel she can and moves again. She's alone now. No command. No backup. But as she pieces together the timeline, a larger pattern begins to emerge. The summit wasn't targeted randomly. It was chosen for a specific reason. Something is scheduled to happen in less than 12 hours. A vote, a signing, a declaration of some kind. One that threatens to reshape the global balance of power. But more than that, someone wants to replace that narrative. To rewrite it. To use the world's most secure event as a stage for their own version of truth. It's not terrorism. It's storytelling. By mid-afternoon, the summit has become a pressure cooker. Inside the main chamber, confusion breeds anger. Delegates argue. Accusations fly. Guards assigned to protect are turning on one another. Rumors of a coup begin to swirl. Was it an inside job? Was it orchestrated by a rogue nation? A leaked video circulates on private devices. Grainy footage showing a world leader escorted down a hallway by masked operatives. But the authenticity is unclear. Is it real? Is it edited? Is it bait? Kate manages to infiltrate a secondary control room, half abandoned. There, she finds security logs, fragmented but telling. A list of authorized entries into restricted zones. Names that shouldn't be there. One of them stops her cold. She recognizes it. It's a name from her past. A man she once trusted. Someone she believed was dead. And now, somehow, he's walking these same halls. That's when the story tightens. Shifts. The plot no longer revolves around just saving the summit. It becomes something more intimate. More personal. Kate isn't just fighting to prevent disaster. She's chasing ghosts. The betrayal buried deep in her own file has surfaced again. And it's pulling strings on a scale she never imagined. She moves faster now. The corridors begin to feel like mazes. Lights flicker. Emergency exits are welded shut. Explosives rigged not to collapse the building, but to isolate floors, trap key targets. Someone has engineered every square inch of this moment. And Kate, once just another detail in the background, has become the anomaly. The wild card. And as dusk falls over the city and the world waits for a press briefing that will never come, a message is broadcast across every screen inside the summit. It's a symbol. Simple. Stark. Recognizable to no one on record, but deeply familiar to Kate. She stares. And understands. The attack isn't over. It's only just begun. The symbol pulses across every screen like a heartbeat. Simple, black, and unmistakable. For most watching, it means nothing. Just a cryptic glyph broadcast by an unknown force. But for Kate, it's the key to everything. She's seen it before, long ago, in a file she was never meant to read. And suddenly, everything that felt global collapses into something deeply personal. The summit may be the stage, but the roots of this attack reach back to a moment she tried to forget. She moves like a shadow now, slipping between the cracks of locked doors and rerouted patrols. The summit building has become a creature, reconfigured, alive with tension. Drones buzz overhead, infrared lights sweep through corridors, and the temperature control systems have been hijacked to disorient anyone still resisting. Kate finds herself in the West Wing, where the data servers hum beneath the floor like nervous insects. She's here for answers, but finds only more riddles. There, inside a secured server room bathed in blue glow, she uncovers a terminal that hasn't yet been wiped. Logs appear, fragmented and looping, revealing snippets of intercepted communications. One name appears over and over. Roman Calder. The man from her past. Once a handler. Once a friend. Now, apparently, the architect of a global nightmare. The data shows access codes, genuine ones, used to bypass every layer of Summit security. Calder didn't just breach the system. He built it. She's still staring at the screen when the lights cut out. The door behind her swings open. And he's there. Older now. Gaunter. A different man, but with the same voice. The same ice-calm demeanor. He doesn't raise a weapon. He doesn't need to. He simply says her name. Kate. She pulls her sidearm. He doesn't flinch. "You think I'm the enemy," he says quietly. "I think you're still following orders that don't exist." What follows isn't a fight. It's a conversation that feels more dangerous than gunfire. Calder reveals the truth behind the Summit siege. It was never about violence. Not directly. It was about collapsing the credibility of global governance. Creating a moment of manufactured chaos in which new alliances would form, not forged in backrooms, but live on camera. The Summit wasn't a hostage situation. It was a launch pad. And the launch? Already begun. Delegates had been split, not just physically, but ideologically. Some knew. Some agreed. Others were pawns. Kate realizes the vote they had all gathered for wasn't going to be sabotaged, it was going to be stolen. Hijacked by proxy, broadcast to the world under duress, framed as unity when it was nothing but a hostile takeover dressed in diplomacy. Calder extends his hand. Not to her, but to her belief. He doesn't want her dead. He wants her converted. Wants her to help shepherd the new order. "The old rules protect no one," he says. "The people you serve have already sold their loyalty. I'm just signing the receipt." Kate lowers her weapon. Just for a second. And then strikes. What follows is a brutal, close-quarters fight. It's not cinematic. It's desperate. Raw. No choreography. Just survival. They crash through server towers. A burst pipe sprays steam across the room. Sparks fly. In the chaos, Calder escapes, wounded, but not defeated. Kate is left bloodied and breathless, but more determined than ever. She now knows the plan. And she has hours, maybe minutes, to stop it. Above her, the Summit has been divided. A section of the building rebranded as the New Coalition Zone is being prepared for a televised event. Cameras are in place. Delegates are being fed rehearsed statements. The press, cut off from real-time data, are being spoon-fed a narrative. And the world, watching helplessly from behind flickering screens, begins to buy the illusion Kate needs help. And in the most unlikely place, she finds it. A rogue communications analyst, one of the few not corrupted or silenced, emerges from hiding. Her name is Talon, and she's been patching together fragments of surveillance footage and intercepted audio since the attack began. She and Kate form a plan, not to stop the broadcast, but to interrupt it. To expose the manipulation live, using Calder's own tech against him. They descend into the lowest level of the Summit Center, a forgotten operations hub from the Cold War era, complete with analog tech immune to digital overrides. Dusty, flickering, barely functional, but still operational. From here, they can splice into the broadcast feed and insert real footage, the violence, the threats, the corruption. But they're not alone. Calder's enforcers find them. Another fight erupts, not just bullets, but a battle of ideologies shouted between gunfire. Kate protects Talon as she boots the system. Sparks fall like rain. One of the old CRT monitors explodes. But they do it. Just as Calder begins his final speech, the signal flips. The world sees it all. The betrayals. The threats. The planned collapse. The illusion fractures. Chaos erupts. Inside the summit chamber, leaders panic. Guards realign. Some delegates turn on each other, revealing allegiances that had been forged in the weeks before the summit began. Calder's team scrambles to regain control, but it's too late. The moment is broken. The page won't turn. The world sees the truth. Kate chases Calder to the roof, where a waiting helicopter spins its blades. Rain begins to fall, soft at first, then harder. It's not a set piece. It's not glamorous. It's the end. He turns to her. No anger. Just resignation. You could have helped. She raises her weapon. I did help, she says. And fires. The shot doesn't kill him, but it stops him. The chopper lifts without him, vanishing into the clouds. Kate calls in the location. Calder is detained. Quietly. No headlines. No public trial. Because some villains don't get a stage. They vanish the way they operated, into the margins. In the days that follow, the summit ends not with a press conference, but with silence. The event is declared a security disaster. Diplomats return home with half-signed papers and bruised pride. And Kate? She's offered a commendation. She declines it. She leaves the service. Disappears. The final scenes show her walking through a quiet town somewhere far from power. No earpiece. No gun. Just a woman who did what had to be done. A woman who uncovered a truth and refused to let the lie stand. The world keeps spinning. But now, it spins with a tremble. And somewhere, deep underground, backup servers still blink with footage no one's seen. Waiting. Just in case someone tries again. Kate Saunders moves like she's memorized every shadow in the room. She doesn't talk unless it's necessary. She doesn't flinch when shots are fired. But watch her closely and you'll see it, the quiet tension in her jaw, the flicker of something old behind her eyes. Grief, maybe. Or guilt. She is the kind of protagonist that doesn't need a speech to win you over. She earns it in silence. In presence. In the way she doesn't ask to be the one who carries the weight, but never once drops it. On the surface, she is the perfect agent. Precise. Unshakable. Loyal. She moves through protocols like she built them herself. But the deeper the story cuts, the more we see the fracture lines underneath. She's not flawless, she's just functional. Held together by training, yes, but also by loss. Long before the summit was ever attacked, before the corridors turned to war zones, something was already broken in her. She carries a secret history. Not one of scandal or betrayal, but of choices made in silence. We learn, slowly, that she once trusted someone who vanished in the worst way, Roman Calder. A ghost of a man who didn't just betray his country, but her trust. And though his name isn't spoken for most of the film, his absence lingers in every decision she makes. The way she hesitates before entering a room. The way she always checks for exits. The way she never, ever lets herself be surprised. When he returns, when she hears his voice again, it doesn't just stir up the mission. It stirs up the past. Suddenly, the cool detachment she's worn like armor starts to crack. You see it in how she moves, faster, more desperate. Not just to stop him, but to make sense of what he became. And more hauntingly, what she almost became too. Because Kate isn't just fighting a villain. She's fighting a reflection. Calder is the character the story uses to ask the question, what if justice isn't enough? What if the system you serve is as corrupt as the threats you fight? He's calm, measured, terrifyingly articulate. A man who believes in what he's doing. Not because he's cruel, but because he's convinced he's right. And that conviction, rooted in disillusionment, is what makes him dangerous. He doesn't scream. He doesn't posture. He explains. Like a teacher. like someone showing a child the truth behind a magic trick. His relationship with Kate is not just antagonist and protagonist, it's personal, intimate, even. Not romantically, but ideologically. He trained her. He shaped her thinking. And in many ways, she is his greatest success, and his greatest regret. He sees in her the proof that his methods worked. That even someone as sharp, as loyal, as precise as Kate could be built by a system too blind to see its own flaws. But Kate, for all her restraint, is not easy to sway. Because what sets her apart isn't just her skills. It's her choice to keep believing. Not in perfection, but in responsibility. In the idea that truth, even when compromised, still matters. That saving people, even if they never thank you, never even know, still means something. She doesn't kill Calder out of vengeance. She stops him because someone has to. And when it's over, she doesn't gloat. She doesn't stand on podiums. She vanishes, because the job was never about recognition. It was about doing what no one else could. Talon, the rogue analyst, becomes the closest thing the film has to a moral compass. She's younger, less hardened, but no less brave. She doesn't carry a weapon. She carries information. She's the one who pieces the truth together, pixel by pixel, frame by frame. Her courage is quiet, the kind that works through the night while the rest of the world sleeps. And when Kate finds her, Talon doesn't hesitate. She joins the mission not because she's ordered to, but because she believes. There's a powerful contrast between them. Talon is hope. Kate is endurance. One still believes the world can be fixed. The other knows it might not be, but fights anyway. And their dynamic, while not traditionally dramatic, is deeply moving. They don't become best friends. They don't trade backstories. But they build something unshakable, trust. In a story filled with betrayal, their alliance stands like a promise. Then there's the ensemble orbiting the summit world leaders from across the globe, each representing more than just their flags. Some are symbols of stability, others of ambition. But within that gallery of power, we're shown how easy it is to fracture unity. One by one, they reveal their fragility, their paranoia, their desire to control the narrative. When the summit begins, they're polished, rehearsed. By the time it ends, they are exposed, some broken, some reborn. One leader in particular, a chancellor from Europe, plays a surprising role. Initially presented as rigid and politically evasive, she becomes an unlikely source of defiance. In the broadcast's final moments, when she refuses to read the scripted declaration, her silence says everything. It's a small act, but in a film about systems and symbols, that refusal becomes a rebellion. She reminds us that integrity can survive, even in the belly of the beast. The security personnel, meanwhile, are shown as both victims and pawns. Some are loyal to protocol. Others are revealed to have been flipped long before the summit began. Their presence raises another central question. What does loyalty mean when the system you serve has already made its compromises? The film doesn't answer that directly. It lets the characters embody the spectrum, from those who blindly follow orders to those who sacrifice everything for truth. Even the attackers, Calder's operatives, aren't portrayed as faceless thugs. They're strategic, precise, often silent. Their actions are violent, yes, but coordinated in a way that suggests deep belief. They're not mercenaries. They're believers. And that belief makes them unsettling, because it mirrors the same kind of certainty Kate once had, the kind she had to break to survive. In one haunting scene, she confronts an operative who's cornered, wounded, and refusing to speak. But instead of interrogation, Kate simply asks, "Why him?" referring to Calder. The operative stares at her and says, "Because he sees what no one else does." It's a line that doesn't explain. It haunts. Because in that moment, we understand that even villains have followers who feel seen. And that's what makes them last. Throughout the film, character arcs aren't just about change, they're about clarity. Kate doesn't transform into someone new. She becomes more herself, stripped of chains, reconnected to a truth she tried to forget. Calder doesn't repent. He doubles down. His final moments are not of surrender, but of acceptance. He knows he's lost the stage, but not the idea. And that's what lingers. The idea. The belief that the world could be reset, even through fire. And Talon? She doesn't fade into the background. The final moments show her uploading footage to an independent server. The truth, preserved, protected. And in her eyes, we see the future. Not a clean one. Not easy. But possible. The characters in this story aren't drawn in broad strokes. They're sketched with restraint, with nuance. No monologues. No grand confessions. Just actions. Decisions. Regrets. In a world built on secrets, their humanity peeks through in glances, in silences, in the weight they carry when no one's watching. That's what makes them unforgettable. They're not heroes. They're people. But in the moment the world fell apart, they chose to hold the line. And that choice is what defines them forever. Sometimes, what you see on screen is only the tip of something much stranger. Because some films are made with so much secrecy, pressure, or unpredictability that the real stories unfold not in front of the camera, but behind it, tucked inside isolated production trailers, whispered between takes, or buried in versions of the script that never saw the light of day. And this particular production? It was a pressure cooker from the very beginning. A film that drew attention long before the first clapperboard snapped, not because of its star-studded cast or explosive set pieces, but because of the uncanny gravity surrounding its creation. Before a single scene was filmed, there was the leak. A security breach. Not digital, but physical. A printed version of the script, an early draft, was found abandoned in the back of a rideshare car. Left, as the story goes, by a junior assistant on the writing team who had been shuttling between meetings with the director and the studio's legal department. The driver, not knowing what he held, turned it in to the production office the next morning. That one mistake set off a silent panic. The title hadn't even been officially announced, but now the entire third act of the movie was floating around L.A. like a whispered dare. Strangely, though, the script that surfaced wasn't the one they ended up filming. In fact, over 6 versions of the screenplay existed, each with alternate endings, redacted dialogue, and entire characters who would later be erased from the plot altogether. One version ended with the world erupting into all-out war. Another had the summit attack revealed as a simulation, an elaborate training exercise gone wrong. Yet another draft had no mention of Roman Calder at all, with the mastermind hidden behind the identity of a diplomat from a fictional country. That's how guarded the production was. They weren't just making a movie. They were guarding a secret. Filming was done under a code name, Project Horizon. Even local officials didn't know what was being shot in their districts. Permits listed vague descriptors like governmental conference scenes, and stage equipment was labeled under fake brand names. Every cast and crew member signed 3 separate NDAs. The director reportedly had a private server set up just to handle script revisions, which were shared with watermarked timecodes that expired after 24 hours. If an actor failed to open a revision in time, it would lock them out permanently. One actor famously missed an update, and when they arrived on set, their character had been killed off in the previous scene. But even with all that control, strangeness slipped in. On day 14 of the shoot, every clock on set, wristwatches, wall clocks, even digital displays on phones, froze for exactly 1 minute at 2:47 p.m. No alarms. No power outage. Just a universal pause, followed by everything resetting. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't staged. Production paused for over an hour trying to figure it out. Electricians combed through the power grid. IT specialists searched for hacking attempts. Nothing. Some called it coincidence. Others something else. The director, unfazed, reportedly said, "It fits the mood. Let it stay in the story." And so it did. You might notice that the pivotal scene, when the summit systems are first hacked, occurs at exactly 2:47 p.m. Then there was the rain. The rooftop sequence at the end of the film wasn't supposed to be wet. It was written as dry, windless, somber. But on the day of shooting, a freak rainstorm hit the area. Not a drizzle. A downpour. The crew scrambled to cover equipment. The actors waited in trailers. Hours passed. The window for shooting grew tighter. Finally, just as they were about to cancel the day, the rain slowed, not stopped, just enough to let the cameras roll. The director decided to embrace it. Shot the scene as is, with puddles forming beneath the actors' feet and water streaking down their faces. What wasn't planned was what happened next. As the helicopter in the background took off, one of the prop blades caught the light at just the right angle and created a prism across the skyline, captured by a lens flare in the final take. It was so stunning, so accidental, that it was kept in post. That exact frame would later become the film's official poster. A moment born from an unscheduled storm and a director's refusal to fight the weather. There's also the matter of the underground tunnels. The production used a decommissioned Cold War-era bunker for several key sequences, including the scenes where Kate and Talon splice into the broadcast feed. But the location wasn't just a set piece. It had its own eerie atmosphere, long corridors with decaying insulation, rusted steel doors, and a faint, permanent echo that distorted footsteps. According to multiple crew members, strange things started happening underground. Walkie-talkies would buzz with static that sometimes sounded like voices. One night, an assistant director was locked inside one of the rooms after the magnetized security latch re-engaged on its own. And in one incident caught on a surveillance camera, a boom mic operator ran out of the tunnel after hearing what he described as a whisper, saying my name, like it was right behind me. The production leaned into the strangeness. They even added a low-frequency tone to the tunnel sequences in post-production, barely audible, designed to trigger discomfort in the audience's subconscious. That hum you feel but can't quite hear? It's real. Engineered to make your chest tighten and your nerves buzz. Then there was the blackout. During one particularly long night shoot inside the summit chamber, the entire power grid failed. Not just the set. The whole block. Lights gone. Cameras off. Emergency generators failed to kick in. Cast and crew were plunged into total darkness. Phones flickered, then died. For 10 minutes, no one could explain it. Some stayed silent. Others panicked. The city claimed it was a localized grid failure, but no cause was ever found. The footage from that night? Gone. Corrupted. Never recovered. And yet, something strange happened in the aftermath. That same night, one of the sound editors captured a strange hum on their handheld recorder, a tone that wasn't there before. It has since been unofficially dubbed the Calder frequency. Whether it's a fluke, a glitch, or something else, no one knows. But it now plays briefly, embedded in the score, just before the film's climax. You won't notice it unless you're wearing headphones. And even then, it barely registers. But once you've heard it, you never forget. The performances, too, came with their own quirks. The actor playing Roman Calder requested to remain off-grid for the duration of the shoot. No interviews. No photos. He traveled under a pseudonym. His trailer had blacked-out windows. He was never seen rehearsing with the cast. In fact, most of his scenes with Kate were filmed separately, with body doubles and digital stitching. The rooftop confrontation? Shot in 2 halves, on separate days, using precise eye-line tracking. Only the director and editor ever saw both actors perform together, digitally combined. Why? No one knows. Rumors range from scheduling conflicts to intense method acting. But the mystery only fueled the legend. Even the credits list him under a pseudonym. To this day, some fans speculate he's a known actor playing an uncredited role. Others believe he's a composite, created with AI and camera tricks. No proof exists either way. And then there's the final scene. Kate walking away, unnamed town, coat drawn tight against the wind. It was improvised. The original ending had dialogue, a final monologue about choices, power, and sacrifice. But after shooting it, the director asked for silence. Told the actress to walk until she felt it was over. No direction. No marks. Just feeling. The cameras rolled. She walked. What made it into the film was take 4. And the final line? The one heard in voiceover as she disappears into the distance. The system survives. But I do too, was written on a napkin by the sound editor during lunch. A throwaway idea. But when the crew heard it, they knew it was the only way the story could end. The film premiered under tight security. Critics were required to surrender phones. No screeners were sent. The first reviews came from handwritten notes. And even then, something strange happened. Critics reported technical anomalies during screenings, subtle glitches like flickers between scenes or momentary frame skips. It was never consistent, never provable, but it added to the myth. One reviewer claimed the film doesn't just show you a conspiracy, it pulls you into one. And then there's the rabbit. Yes, the rabbit. In one scene, barely visible in the background of the summit corridors, a white rabbit hops through a hallway. Unscripted. Unexplained. A security guard stares at it, then keeps walking. No one on set claimed responsibility. No trainer. No prop department. It was caught on 2 cameras and kept in the final edit. The internet, of course, ran wild with theories. Was it symbolic? An accident? An Easter egg? The director, when asked, just smiled. Sometimes, he said, truth sneaks in when you're not looking. And maybe that's the strangest fact of all. That in a film designed to show how power bends perception, how truth is filtered through surveillance and silence, maybe the real surprises weren't in the script. Maybe they were in the shadows. In the stories whispered on set. In the details too small to fake. Maybe, just maybe, the strangeness wasn't fiction. Maybe it was the only real thing left. It begins with stillness. Not silence, but a kind of atmospheric stillness, the kind that makes you lean forward, instinctively, even before you know why. The skyline looms. The roads stretch in patterns too perfect to be accidental. And in the glass reflections of an international summit center built like a palace of diplomacy, something shifts. You can feel it in the air. Not quite dread. Not yet. Just the faint, uneasy hum of control slipping. And once the doors close and the leaders are sealed inside, the real narrative begins. From a critical standpoint, the film doesn't open with action. It opens with design. It seduces you into a system so meticulously arranged that its very perfection is unnerving. This summit is the apex of globalization. 20 leaders, their entourages, their interpreters, their silent agendas, all choreographed into a single, gleaming event. Critics immediately noted how the film uses this setting as both a symbol and a stage. It isn't just a backdrop for action, it's the thesis itself. Power, performance, and surveillance under one roof. A palace of glass, where every wall reflects back a different truth. The structure of the film invites comparison to political thrillers of the past, but it quickly subverts expectations. Instead of pitting nations against one another in the traditional sense, the story dissects something far more insidious, the erosion of truth from within the very systems designed to uphold it. And that's where critics began to divide. One of the most scrutinized scenes, and arguably one of its most defining, is the fire drill. It arrives with such subtlety that many viewers didn't register it as the turning point until much later. From a narrative lens, it's genius. What appears to be a routine protocol, a brief, procedural clearing of rooms, becomes a surgical move by the antagonist's operatives to map the terrain, test response time, and identify weak links. Critics praised the sequence for its restraint. There are no gunshots, no chase, just misdirection. And yet it marks the beginning of the collapse. What makes this moment so compelling is the way it leans into realism. These aren't villains with blueprints and bombs. They are technocrats, strategists, saboteurs using the tools of the institution against itself. For many reviewers, this was the film's most unsettling accomplishment. It rendered corruption plausible, almost bureaucratic. And then comes the lockout. This, by most critical consensus, is the moment the film declares itself. The instant the summit security systems fail, doors sealing, comms dead, chain of command evaporating, the story shifts from a slow burn into a pressure chamber. Critics from both political and cinematic backgrounds zeroed in on this event not as spectacle, but as metaphor. This isn't about one building being compromised. It's about trust, public, institutional, democratic, being severed in real time. What the film does masterfully in this section is play with perspective. We watch confusion bloom in the main chamber. Leaders stripped of their titles by isolation. Officials scrambling to remember the exact wording of protocols that no longer apply. The scene is chaotic, but never disorienting. Critics noted how the direction stays emotionally grounded, anchored by Kate's trajectory, her eyes scanning not for enemies, but for patterns. She isn't a reactionary hero. She's a witness unraveling the plot through deduction, not dominance. And this approach, empathy over adrenaline, is what separates the film from its genre counterparts. Critics were quick to praise the choice to frame the protagonist's journey not as one of transformation, but of excavation. Kate doesn't evolve in a traditional sense, she remembers. Her arc is about reconnection with the instincts and suspicions she was trained to suppress. And when Calder is revealed, not as a faceless foreign adversary, but as a former mentor, a man whose fingerprints are on the very systems she once trusted, the film's philosophical layers deepen. This revelation sparked intense discussion among critics. Some saw Calder's ideology as a commentary on populism turned inside out, a belief in rebirth through collapse. Others framed him as the personification of institutional rot, not an outsider attacking the system, but an insider reprogramming it with the same tools it once used to maintain order. But what united most critical perspectives was the recognition that the film resisted easy answers. In one pivotal scene, so quiet you might miss its weight, Kate reviews surveillance footage of a hallway where an attack occurred. The angle is distorted. The sound, garbled. Multiple versions of the same footage exist, each slightly altered. She can't determine which is real. The message here is not subtle. In an age of manipulation, even memory is malleable. The summit isn't just being overtaken physically, it's being rewritten in real time. This scene became a lightning rod in early reviews. Some called it too on the nose. Others hailed it as the film's core. Because the question it asks is terrifying. If the record can't be trusted, who decides what truth is? And the film refuses to answer. Instead, it presents characters on every side of that question. The leaders, some of whom cling to official scripts even as the world crumbles. The rogue journalist, trying to leak the truth through a hijacked news feed. The young analyst, Talon, whose courage is quiet but revolutionary, using raw footage to piece together a counter-narrative. And Calder, calm and unblinking, whose thesis is simple. Truth is performance, and control is belief. By the time we reach the film's climax, the staged signing of the false declaration, viewers and critics alike are forced into a moral maze. The tension doesn't come from whether Kate will stop the event, but whether the world will care that it's been manipulated. What if the lie, once broadcast, becomes truth simply by being seen? This question struck a nerve. In post-screening debates, Some critics suggested the film bordered on nihilism, that it portrayed a world where truth no longer mattered. Others argued the opposite, that the film showed how even a single act of resistance, Talon's feed hijack, Kate's refusal to disappear, could still shatter illusion. It became clear that the story wasn't offering comfort. It was offering confrontation. The final rooftop scene added further complexity. Kate doesn't kill Calder to save the day. She wounds him, delays him. The helicopter escapes. The plan isn't dismantled. It's interrupted. And Calder's final words, "You could have helped," don't sound like threat. They sound like regret. This ambiguity drove critics to dissect the conclusion with surgical precision. Was this a victory? A warning? A prequel to something worse? But perhaps the most emotionally resonant decision was the film's true ending. Kate walking away. No accolades. No audience. Just silence. This struck critics in a way few thrillers ever do. She doesn't get justice. She doesn't dismantle the system. She just walks. Because that's what real resistance often looks like. Not grand speeches, but endurance. Survival. Refusal critics noted that this ending echoed the film's structure, unresolved, restless, and true. Because it understood what many stories forget, not all victories are visible. And not all heroes stay. In terms of reception, the film split audiences, but united them in conversation. It wasn't designed to be liked. It was designed to linger. To make people leave the theater unsettled. The kind of story that replays in your mind days later, not for its explosions, but for its questions. What if truth isn't something you find? What if it's something you choose? And what if the systems we've built are already being rewritten by people who stopped believing in the stories we tell ourselves? That's where the film lands, critically and thematically. Not with an answer, but with an open door. And just enough silence to hear yourself think. It began in whispers, the way the most volatile productions sometimes do, not with press releases or teaser campaigns, but with an idea that felt too ambitious to be real. A single summit. 20 world leaders. One sealed building. One unstoppable threat. No one quite knew where the story would land, only that it had to feel eerily close to now, yet somehow beyond it. And so, behind studio gates and blackout emails, the work began. Not loudly. Not publicly. But with a sense of precision that bordered on obsession. From the start, the production team understood the stakes. This wouldn't be just another action thriller. It was a political parable wrapped in tension, secrecy, and paranoia. And to pull that off, they needed everything. The world, the architecture, the language of power, to feel authentic down to the molecule. That's why they didn't shoot on a soundstage. At least, not entirely. Instead, they scouted over 20 government buildings, embassies, and corporate facilities across 3 continents, looking for a structure that could serve as the summit's beating heart. Eventually, they found it, an abandoned international bank headquarters in Frankfurt. A fortress of glass and steel, once used for high-level diplomatic events, now empty and echoing with its own history. Production designer Hiram Nash called it the most honest location I've ever walked into, like it was already part of the film before we rolled a single frame. Inside, they didn't just dress the set, they reinvented it. The team built layers of security infrastructure, biometric doors that actually worked, facial recognition systems coded with real tech, and a live command center manned by retired intelligence officers brought in as consultants. One of them, a former NATO security coordinator, ended up coaching the extras playing summit guards, teaching them not just how to move, but how to watch, how to notice things the way real agents do. The realism didn't stop there. Each country's delegation had its own room, decorated with symbols, colors, and tech according to the precise diplomatic norms of that nation. Prop artists handcrafted documents with real signatures. The digital displays throughout the set, flashing maps, crisis feeds, security protocols, weren't looping pre-recorded footage. They were live-reactive screens, coded by a tech team brought in from a leading military simulation firm. At any moment, the actors could touch a display and pull up a live crisis scenario to respond to in character. That immersion affected the performances. The actor portraying the British Prime Minister refused to leave his delegation room during filming days. He ate there, slept between takes on the conference couch, responded only to his character's name. At one point, during a break in shooting, another actor playing a foreign diplomat tried to casually joke with him in the hallway, and was met with an icy stare and a single word, "classified." The crew started referring to him as the PM. Not mockingly, respectfully, because it worked. Then there was the filming of the lockout sequence. For those few minutes of the movie when every door slams shut, when communications drop and lights flicker, none of it was CGI. The team hardwired the building with a timed relay system that triggered electromagnetic door locks, simulated alarms, and rolling blackouts in real time. The actors had no warning. When Kate runs down the hallway and the doors slam behind her, that wasn't rehearsal. That was the real moment. You can see the flicker of genuine surprise in her eyes. She later said it was one of the most disorienting, exhilarating experiences of her career. "We were told something would happen," she said, "but not when, not how. So every instinct in that scene, it's mine. No acting. Just adrenaline." The realism had its consequences. During one particularly intense scene in the data center, the strobing lights triggered a fire suppression system no one realized was still active. Foam sprayed. Equipment was drenched. An entire day of shooting was lost. The crew mopped for 12 hours. But the silver lining? The prop team salvaged the drenched server panels and used them as set dressing in later scenes. Burnt, broken, real. And then there was the rooftop. Shot across 4 days in late autumn, the final confrontation had to balance tight camera angles, minimal CGI, and unpredictable weather. The production had a 10-minute window each morning when the sun hit the skyline just right, casting golden light across the roof's steel frame. They rehearsed relentlessly, but when cameras rolled, nature refused to cooperate. Clouds. Wind. Then, finally, on the third morning, a break. The director didn't call action. He whispered it. And in that take, as the wind caught the coat of the actor playing Calder and the sun hit just behind his shoulder, everything aligned. The chopper in the background lifted. The tension held. The moment clicked. They called it the miracle take. No one spoke afterward. The director walked to the monitor, watched playback, nodded once, and walked away. Another moment of strange fortune came during the summit's descent into chaos. A background actor, a veteran of dozens of TV procedurals, accidentally improvised a line that hadn't been scripted, "They're watching us from inside." He muttered it under his breath while walking past a camera. The audio team caught it, isolated it, and sent it to the editor, who used it as the echoing line that plays just before the summit's power systems crash. A line that wasn't in any draft. Now, it's in the trailer. And on posters. And etched into fan theories online. But not everything was so smooth. The director, known for his precision, reportedly clashed with the screenwriting team during post-production. There were heated debates over the ending. Whether Kate should walk away or stay. Whether Calder should live or vanish. At one point, an entirely new ending was filmed. Kate speaking to a classified tribunal, explaining the true events of the summit. But in test screenings, the audience felt betrayed. She wouldn't explain herself, one viewer wrote. She'd disappear. So they went back. Res-hot the final scene with just her. Walking. No words. And the silence said everything. The music, too, was born out of an unorthodox process. Instead of composing the score after the film was cut, the composer created ambient pieces during filming. Soft, pulsing, evolving soundscapes that were played on set between scenes. The actors heard them in their earpieces while performing. The rhythm affected their pacing. The tension in the music found its way into their movements. The final score, when layered into the edit, already felt like it belonged, because it had been there all along. Even the marketing had its quirks. Instead of releasing a trailer first, the studio launched a mysterious live stream titled Summit Feed. For 12 hours, it showed nothing but static security camera angles from inside the fictional Summit building. No characters. No dialogue. Just hallways, blinking lights, muffled overhead announcements. Eagle-eyed viewers spotted hidden symbols. Flickering timestamps. A name scratched into the corner of one frame. Calder. The internet lost its mind. Theories exploded. Blogs speculated it was a viral campaign tied to real-world events. Even journalists weren't sure if it was fiction or a leaked feed. Only after a week did the studio confirm it was promotional. And finally, there was the rabbit. Yes, the white rabbit. Unscripted. Untrained. It wandered onto set during the filming of a corridor scene. The cameras were rolling. The actors didn't break. The rabbit just hopped across the floor, paused, stared at a door, and kept going. No one claimed responsibility. No animal wrangler was listed for that day. Some believed it was a prank. Others said it was fate. The director? He left it in the film. Didn't explain why. And when asked in an interview if it meant something, he just smiled and said, "You tell me." In the end, this was a film born of control, but made great by chaos. A production that tried to lock everything down, only to discover that the best moments were the ones they never planned. A summit meant to be a stage for politics, but which became a playground for philosophy, performance, and unexpected poetry. Because behind the metal detectors and mirrored corridors, behind the encrypted scripts and blackout trailers, a simple truth unfolded. Sometimes, the world doesn't need another hero. Sometimes, it just needs someone to stay quiet long enough to listen. And when the story finally arrived, shaped by storms and systems, sabotage and silence, it didn't roar. It whispered. And we're still hearing it now. It begins with steel and silence. A building that looms above the skyline like it was never meant to be seen by the public, only mirrored by the clouds. All glass and concrete, its facade is polished to the point of menace, reflecting everything around it, absorbing nothing. The kind of place where light enters, but no warmth escapes. The kind of place where decisions are made that never reach the public ear. And this is where it all unfolds. Not in the backrooms of intelligence agencies or on the battlefield, but in this monolithic structure that becomes both a character and a prison. From the very first frame, the setting doesn't just inform the film's atmosphere, it is the atmosphere. The summit's location is never explicitly named. There are clues, signage in multiple languages, media vans with different flags, an international skyline that hints at Europe but never confirms it. This anonymity is intentional. The building is a symbol, a stand-in for every high-security institution we imagine behind the curtain of global affairs. It's nowhere and everywhere. And by denying us a firm geographic anchor, the film keeps us unmoored, just like its characters. Inside, the world shifts. The camera guides us through corridors that hum with air conditioning and barely audible radio chatter. The hallways are sterile, lined with brushed metal, clean enough to perform surgery in. But what makes the environment truly haunting is how familiar it feels. Like every airport terminal, every luxury hotel, every governmental space you've ever walked through and immediately forgotten. A place designed not to be remembered. Production designers didn't build sets so much as they engineered an experience. Every floor of the Summit Center has its own visual identity. The main chamber, where the leaders convene, is circular, evoking an illusion of equality. No one sits at the head. The lighting is diffuse, indirect, eliminating shadows. But this brightness isn't comforting. It's artificial. It feels like surveillance. like something waiting behind a two-way mirror. Critics would later describe it as an aquarium filled with sharks pretending to be fish. In contrast, the hallways are claustrophobic, narrow, repetitive, with only subtle shifts in color temperature to orient you. Some are lit with cold blue overhead fluorescence, giving them the feel of a medical ward. Others are wrapped in warm tones that border on sickly. The longer you spend in these corridors, the more disoriented you become. You begin to lose your sense of time and place. And that is exactly what the film wants. Because this isn't just a story about an attack. It's about the fragility of structure, the illusion of control. And nowhere is that illusion more evident than in the subterranean levels. Here, beneath the summit, lies the film's most fascinating setting, the forgotten Cold War bunker that becomes the last refuge of resistance. It's a place untouched by modern tech. Rusted consoles, cracked tile, a forgotten red phone that hasn't rung in decades. The cinematography here shifts noticeably. Handheld cameras, grainier textures, warmer shadows. It's less sleek, but more real. The bunker feels like truth, buried beneath the veneer of diplomacy above. And the deeper we go into this labyrinth, the more the architecture begins to mirror the story's moral spiral. Rooms become smaller. Walls close in. Doors lock more quickly. Every floor feels like a deeper level of subconscious. A place where secrets are kept not because they're classified, but because they're too dangerous to face. Lighting plays a pivotal role in reinforcing these psychological layers. The main chamber's artificial brightness contrasts sharply with the flickering emergency reds that flood the building when the attack begins. That red, so often used in action films for alarm, is here used to evoke something slower. Impending doom, yes, but also the slow bleed of a system dying from within. There's a scene where Kate walks alone down a hallway bathed entirely in red. Her shadow stretches behind her. The sound drops out. We're not watching her walk. We're watching her descend. Then there's the control room, the summit's neural core. This is where the film's most haunting sequences take place. Rows of monitors. Operators long gone. Screens glitching with half-rendered security footage and static-washed diplomatic feeds. Here, the film's aesthetic takes on the feel of surveillance horror. We're no longer in a political thriller. We're inside the memory of a machine trying to remember how it broke. The cinematography here is slower. The lenses linger longer. Shots are held past the point of comfort, making the viewer squirm under the weight of incomplete data. One particular camera trick stands out across multiple scenes, the use of reflections. The director and DP crafted shots where windows, mirrors, and even floor tiles reflect characters in subtle but disjointed ways. Kate's face often appears fractured in reflections, half-lit, half-obscured, echoing her moral uncertainty. Calder, on the other hand, is rarely reflected. He seems to absorb light without returning it. In a film so obsessed with visibility, that absence becomes ominous. And then there's the rooftop. That final, breathtaking setting high above the city. The rooftop offers something the rest of the film does not: perspective. It's open, wide, exposed. The skyline stretches forever, painted in steel and dusk. The wind here isn't a sound effect. It's real, captured live, swirling through dialogue and whipping coats into flight. The camera work loosens. Wider lenses. Long takes. The tension doesn't come from the setting. It comes from what the characters bring into it. For all its openness, the rooftop is not a place of freedom. It's a place of reckoning. You stand there, surrounded by the city below, but realize there's nowhere else to go. No further layers to descend. No more shadows to hide in. Just truth, laid bare, and the sky above refusing to judge. Color is used with relentless intentionality. The summit's palette is washed, neutral tones, grays, pale blues. But certain characters carry color. Talon, the analyst, wears soft yellow in one critical scene, a small defiance, a flicker of hope. Calder is marked by charcoal and navy, clean, disciplined, and unreadable. Kate begins the film in a pressed black uniform, almost blending into the walls. But as the chaos unfolds, she loses layers. By the time she walks away in the final scene, she's in something unmarked. Civilian. Human. One visual motif repeats often: doors. Locked, opened, breached. The summit is filled with them. The film uses doors not just as plot mechanics, but as emotional punctuation. A closed door becomes a death sentence. An open one, a risk. A malfunctioning door is a metaphor for a system unsure whether it wants to let the truth in or keep it out. Sound, too, plays a critical role. The hum of fluorescent lights. The whine of failing electronics. The echo of shoes on tile. Every sound is chosen not just for realism, but for psychological effect. The score is minimal for most of the film. Ambient pulses, tones that tremble beneath dialogue. Only in moments of revelation does it rise, and even then, it never tells you how to feel. It invites you to decide. In a particularly powerful scene, Kate finds herself in a service elevator stuck between floors. The lights flicker. The soundtrack vanishes. All that remains is her breath, the creak of cables, and the distant sound of voices she can't quite make out. Critics called it a masterclass in restraint, and they were right. The scene accomplishes nothing narratively, but emotionally, it breaks the audience open. It reminds us that being trapped doesn't always look like a cage. Sometimes, it looks like a perfectly designed building. In the end, the film's setting isn't just a backdrop. It's an argument. An argument about visibility. About how the structures we build to project strength can just as easily become monuments to fragility. The Summit Center, in all its sleek perfection, becomes a mausoleum for trust. The bunker, buried and decayed, becomes a cathedral for truth. And the rooftop, with its open sky and unforgiving silence, becomes a courtroom where no one wins, only survives. So much of the film's power lies not in what it says, but in where it chooses to say it. In every corridor that looks the same but hides a different betrayal. In every mirror that doesn't reflect back what it should. In every locked door, every dim hallway, every camera angle that lingers a beat too long. The setting is not passive. It's alive. Watching. And if you're paying attention, if you really look, there are moments when it almost feels like the building itself is trying to speak. You just have to listen to the silence between the echoes. Some films are made under the weight of spectacle. Green screens, motion capture, explosion-laden sound stages echoing with chaos and countdowns. But others are forged in silence. In rooms where every breath is calculated, where every gesture must echo beyond itself. This one was the latter. On screen, it looked like a slow-building storm of power, betrayal, and claustrophobic precision. But behind the camera, that's where things became truly unpredictable. Because when you set out to make a movie about global control unraveling from within, you quickly discover how hard it is to control anything at all. From day one, the production carried a pulse of tension, even before a single scene was shot. The cast and crew were handed scripts with blacked-out pages, passwords to encrypted apps, and code names for characters who didn't officially exist in the script. The secrecy was part of the appeal, but also part of the pressure. Everyone was constantly second-guessing. Was this the real version? Were we allowed to talk about this twist? Could they even use each other's real names? The director, known for his composed style and unnerving calm, ran the set like a military exercise. But not with shouting or ego. With silence. Instead of barking orders, he left handwritten notes on monitors. Let the silence speak here. She doesn't know yet, don't act like she does. Camera stays. The actor leaves. The cast began collecting these notes like fortune cookies. One actor taped them to the inside of his wardrobe closet. Another carried a few folded in his wallet. They called them shadow cues. Quiet instructions that said more in 7 words than a full page of dialogue ever could. Yet, for a movie so bound in restraint, the set was far from cold. In between takes, it was laughter that echoed through those sterile summit hallways. The actor playing the British delegate had a habit of breaking into a flawless Scottish accent just before scenes started, forcing the crew to stifle their chuckles as the slate clapped and the tone shifted back to deadly serious diplomacy. The sound department started a secret tally of how many accents he could rotate through in a single day. Final count: 14. Including one that can only be described as Texan but vaguely Eastern European. Kate's actress, intense and method-driven, stayed deeply in character during shooting hours. But once the cameras stopped, she was the heart of the set. Always first to ask if someone needed water. Known to bring in snacks she baked the night before. On day 12, she surprised the crew with homemade cookies labeled with character names, except for Calder's. His was a single untouched black cookie wrapped in foil, labeled, "For when you're ready to tell the truth." Calder's actor, mysterious and press-shy, loved it. He had an uncanny ability to vanish, not just in character, but physically. Between scenes, he would disappear into unused conference rooms, script in hand, emerging only when called. No one ever saw him rehearse. Yet he always arrived word-perfect. He and the director had a language all their own, half-nods, looks, a shared shorthand that required no explanation. Despite this, he wasn't standoffish. He just existed on a different frequency. During downtime, he and Kate's actress would play a strange wordless game, sitting in chairs across from each other, staring without blinking. First to move or smile lost. The record? 17 minutes. The grip team took bets. And then there was the rabbit. It wasn't supposed to be there. On one of the summit corridor days, just as the cameras rolled on a tense walk-and-talk sequence, a white rabbit wandered into frame. It paused, twitched its nose, then hopped out of view. The crew froze. "No one yell cut," whispered the director. "Just let it happen." They did. The rabbit, appearing as if summoned by the script gods themselves, became a kind of legend. No one knew where it came from. No animal wrangler claimed it. Security checked the building. Nothing. It showed up once, made the scene iconic, and vanished. From that moment on, the rabbit was referred to as the witness. Someone even created a fake call sheet listing it as R. Bunny, uncredited. The Summit Control Center scenes brought their own surprises. Those consoles? Real. Purchased and retrofitted from a decommissioned satellite tracking facility. The screens actually functioned. And the actors were trained to operate them, not just pretend. That level of immersion led to unexpected magic. In one take, an actor absent-mindedly navigated to a feed showing the summit's lower floor, and noticed something off. A prop was misplaced. The director, watching the playback, saw it too. They rewrote the scene on the spot, incorporating the discovery. What was once a continuity error became a plot breadcrumb. But not everything was so lucky. The most ambitious technical challenge was the electromagnetic lock system. Designed to simulate real lockdown protocols, it was a network of wirelessly triggered bolts installed across all summit doors. The idea was simple. At the press of a button, every door would lock simultaneously for the pivotal attack scene. The rehearsal went smoothly. The actual take? Not so much. The system triggered early. Doors slammed while crew were still inside. One camera operator got trapped in a utility closet for 17 minutes with only his Steadicam and a half-eaten protein bar. When they finally freed him, he emerged with a single line, "I saw the truth in there." The footage from that take? Perfect. They used it. Lighting became its own character in the film, and capturing its nuances was a delicate dance. There was a rule on set: no traditional backlighting. The director wanted everything to feel like the natural lighting of a building designed by bureaucrats: functional, oppressive, a little too sterile. But achieving that meant hours of adjusting practical bulbs, rigging hidden fixtures behind vents, and creating entire ceilings that glowed without casting cinematic beauty. The result? A film that feels like it's lit from within, like the building itself is watching you. And the rooftop sequence? The most logistically intense, emotionally raw, and beautifully unscripted moment in the shoot. They had 2 helicopters, limited airspace permission, and a forecast that promised uninterrupted sun, but delivered fog, wind, and heartbreak. They waited 2 days. The actor playing Calder spent both in costume, pacing, refusing to leave the roof. The rooftop had no railing, no safety net. Every step had to be measured. Every shot had to be locked. And when the fog finally broke, they filmed the entire scene in 1 take. The wind caught their coats. The city sparkled behind them. The chopper lifted. And for a moment, it wasn't a movie. It was something else. Something primal. When the director called cut, no one spoke. Everyone just looked out at the skyline. Together. Like they'd seen something rare. Post-production brought its own stories. The editor worked in near isolation. Not out of secrecy, but because he preferred silence. He said he needed to hear the film breathe. His cutting room was dark. No clocks. No windows. He edited by instinct, not schedule. When asked how he knew when a scene was right, he simply said, "It stops asking to be changed." The composer, working independently in another city, sent over hours of score. No instructions. Just track titles: Corridor, Refusal, The Last Door. The director listened and layered the music without once speaking to him. They never met. The composer said, "We understood each other without a single note." There was a celebration screening for the cast and crew before the film's premiere. No press. No photos. Just them. And when the rooftop scene played, when the final moment of the summit faded into silence, Kate's actress stood up, turned to the crew, and simply said, "We didn't just make a movie." They hadn't. They'd built a machine of mirrors and memory. A thriller made not from adrenaline, but from restraint. Not from spectacle, but from precision. A story about power made by people who understood that real power doesn't always explode. Sometimes it whispers. And everyone who was there, everyone who touched it, who waited in the cold, who laughed between takes, who held their breath in the dark, knew they'd been part of something that would echo quietly for years. Like a locked door. Like a forgotten hallway. Like a rabbit passing through a corridor, leaving behind nothing but the question, did anyone else see that? Yes. They did. And they won't forget. It's easy to call it a political thriller. Easy to focus on the glass-walled summit rooms, the precision of tactical maneuvers, the weight of secrets pulsing through the air like electricity. But step back, pull the lens wider, feel the silence between the gunfire and the monologues, and what emerges isn't just a story of global crisis. It's a meditation. A mirror. A warning whispered under breath. This is a film soaked in symbolism, structured not just by action, but by something slower, deeper. It's about control. About perception. About truth disassembled and reassembled until it becomes something unrecognizable. And at the center of it all, a question. What if the real battleground isn't nations or borders, but belief? The entire film is an extended metaphor for systems. How they're built, how they break, and how they lie. The summit itself isn't just a setting. It's the embodiment of the world order. Neutral. Sterile. Supposedly safe. Its structure is exact. Rooms shaped to avoid hierarchy. Lighting meant to promote calm. Entry protocols designed to inspire confidence. And yet, the moment we're allowed to see it up close, it begins to feel off. The air is too still. the surfaces too clean. It's the aesthetic of transparency hiding a fortress of secrecy. The building becomes a symbol, one the film doesn't just showcase, but slowly dissects. And as that dissection unfolds, we begin to understand one of the story's central themes, the illusion of order. Every system portrayed in the film, political, technological, moral, is shown to be either compromised, corrupted, or complicit. The summit, hailed as a symbol of unity, becomes a cage. The security measures, meant to protect, become the very tools used for control. Communications are jammed. Truth is edited in real time. And those tasked with safeguarding the world's most powerful people realize, too late, that they're safeguarding a performance, not a peacekeeping mission. Affakadethis leads to one of the most disturbing revelations, the idea that power no longer lies in decision-making, but in narrative control. We see this clearly in Calder's plan, not to destroy the summit physically, but to rewrite it, to stage a new world order, on camera, and broadcast it before anyone can blink. For him, perception is reality. That's what makes him terrifying. Not his weapons, not his tactics, but his understanding that if you can control what people see, you don't have to control what they think. They'll do the rest themselves. The summit's mirrored glass becomes a recurring motif. It reflects everything. It reflects everyone. But it absorbs nothing. You never see the inner workings, only the surface. Critics picked up on this, noting how often characters are seen through reflections, distortions, or behind glass. Kate, in particular, is frequently shot through half-obscured frames, suggesting not just surveillance, but emotional distance. She's not looking at the world, she's looking through it. And the film dares us to ask, if every wall is a mirror, how do you know which version of yourself is real? That question bleeds directly into another key theme, trust and its collapse. This isn't just about characters betraying one another. It's about the slow erosion of foundational trust, in institutions, in protocols, in memory. Calder once stood for order. Now, he manufactures chaos. Kate once served a system she believed in. Now, she follows only her instincts. And throughout the story, we see smaller betrayals that mirror the larger ones. Guards turning on each other, false identities slipping through security, data rewritten midstream.